Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House in Delmar. And we're going to talk about body and soul today. Of course, as a rabbi, I deal with the soul. Obviously, I don't prescribe medicines. But on the other hand, that sometimes, and in many times, if you can cure your soul, it cures your body. If you have a broken arm, of course, you go to the emergency room and you get it set. So there's nothing spiritual about that. On the other hand, there's a lot of problems, of course, psychological problems, that can be cured with a little bit spiritual undertaking. And in turn, and really, this is made out by medical science also, many even regular diseases, which are not psychological, are probably brought upon by depression, there's a whole book about backaches, for example, that if people have bad backs, it's because they're tense and they're depressed. So even though a person says, well, a backache, I got to go to a real doctor, but that's what I'm saying, many things that could be cured with your mind and with your soul. So we're going to explore that today, and I think that's a very interesting issue. And because then people, once you get into medicine, then you're taking very harsh medicines, and maybe that's not the real cause of anything. So then it complicates matters. Now, not only doesn't it take away your problem, you're taking serious drugs into your body that maybe you really didn't need to. So these are going to be letters from the Rebbe himself, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He passed away in 1994, but his letters are still with us. Coping with tragedy, misfortune, and life's adversary. Depressed mental state. I am in receipt of your letter. Judging by your writing, I trust it is unnecessary to emphasize to you at length that one of the foundations of our faith and way of life is the firm conviction that God's providence extends to everyone individually, and that He is the essence of goodness, and does only good as the Torah states, and God saw all that He has done, and behold, it was very good. And while God gave man freedom of choice to choose his way in life and his daily conduct, He has, in His goodness, given us His Torah, which teaches us what the right way of life is and how to accurately pursue it. Therefore, your writing that you find life, quote-unquote, a burden, and the general mood in which your letter is written are completely out of harmony with the Jewish way of life. I can, of course, understand that such a mood is possible in light of the events and occurrences that you describe in your letter. However, this is possible only if you do not take into account the fact that everything is by divine providence, and therefore you think that you are alone in the world and quite forsaken, having only yourself to rely upon, and so on. On the other hand, if you bear in mind that everything that happens occurs through God's providence, which affects every single individual, and that the only freedom a person has is freedom in those matters with which he personally is concerned, but he has no control over events relating to others, then you will view matters in a different light. Though you may still not understand why such seemingly untoward events occur, it will no longer surprise you, knowing the limitations of the human mind and how impossible it is for a human mind to grasp and to understand the infinite wisdom of God, who is called Ein Sof, infinite. Consequently, seeing that God provided you with the gift of life and other brachas, blessings, and at the same time provides you the opportunity to fulfill His will, not because He needs the satisfaction and pleasure of having His will fulfilled, but simply because this is how He made it possible for a Jew to spread God's light in the world at large, and especially in his own family and immediate environment. Surely it is out of place to refer to these blessings of God as a burden, God forbid. Nor is it right to consider as burdensome the fact that it is difficult to see the good clearly, for as our sages declare, the reward matches the effort. The better and more worthy the object, the harder it is to attain. And while the difficulties may be imaginary or real, the effort to overcome these difficulties will be truly rewarding, and the reward will infinitely surpass the effort. It is surely unnecessary to elaborate further on this subject. I suggest that you have your mezuzahs of your home checked, as well as your tefillin, if they have not been checked within the past 12 months. And every weekday morning before putting on your tefillin, you should put aside a small coin for tzedakah, for charity. No doubt your wife observes the good custom of putting aside a small coin for tzedakah, charity, before lighting the candles on Friday night. Right, so that was a very nice thing from the Rebbe, that a person has to know that everything is from the Almighty, and the person then has to just do what you have to do. A lot of people I know, we have many discussions, they're worried about Israel being surrounded by, really enemies, because they say they'd like to see Israel be wiped off the map. That's truly an enemy. And how can you sustain yourself from the north, and Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, and then internally the Palestinians? But it could, there's what to get depressed, and it's not imaginary. But on the other hand, are we in control of that? So we have to focus on what we're supposed to be doing, and not worrying about the bigger picture so much if we can't do anything about it. Here's the next letter from the Rebbe, which are always so profound. Sadness and disillusionment. I received your letter in which you briefly described the hardships you have endured during your lifetime, the wanderings, the traumatic experiences, the grief. Finally, you describe your recent arrival in, and they do that because, again, when some letter is personal to a person, they may not want it to be advertised around the world inside of a book like this, so therefore they don't give away surely the name and even in the place where they live. And your observations about matters that seem to be inexplicable. You wonder as you write why there seems to be no explanation for the events that transpired with your family and in your home. When you will consider this matter a bit, you will realize that there really is no cause for wonder, for a person can only understand to a limited extent those events that transpire in his life and around him. It is therefore not possible for him to truly comprehend the events that he perceives. To make this matter perfectly clear, I will provide you with an example. Imagine a person entering a hospital operating theater and seeing someone lying on the operating table. People brandishing knives surround him and are cutting him, and the person is groaning with pain. Nevertheless, these people continue with their cutting. The chance observer, wholly unaware of the concept and purpose of a surgical procedure, will leave the room in an uproar. A human being was forcibly taken and is being cut up. He is groaning with pain and cannot free himself from his tormentors and murderers. However, when the accidental observer is given to understand that the operation is critical in order for the patient to live many more decades, for which reason excessive consideration is not being given to the patient's temporary pain and discomfort during the few hours of the operation, then his position will change entirely. The guest observer will not only fully agree that they, the cutters, are not tormentors and murderers, but he will now understand that the very opposite is true, that they are doing the greatest possible favor to the individual who is under the knife. And this is so, for example, that they are truly performing an act of goodness and kindness by operating, notwithstanding the fact that the cutter, in modern terminology, the surgeon, cannot offer a 100% guarantee that the outcome of the surgery will be successful, nor how many more years the patient will live following the surgery, even if the surgery is successful. We understand from the above that a person may experience in his lifetime a matter that pains him for a period of time, true pain and not imaginary. That person, however, is also aware of and moreover sees the divine hand of individual providence, that the world's conduct is not without rhyme or reason, and it functions according to a definite system. Moreover, this system encompasses not only himself and also his family, but so many others as well. Normal, healthy, and sound intellect then dictates that surely these seemingly untoward events do not violate the overall system that prevails in the world around them. It is merely that the individual is not heard from God the benevolent, professor of healing. What great benefit will result from the temporary pain. There are those who question and say that they doubt that the world has a system and purpose. But everyone knows from physics, chemistry, astronomy, and so on, recognized not only by Jews or by believing people, but even by non-believers, that even the smallest atom has its exact rules. Everything must operate in accordance with the rules, even the earth, rocks, plants, and animals, and everything that surrounds us has definite laws and established methods, even though it is far more complex and vast than one person and his family. When we encounter difficult times in our lives, many are spurred to question the existence of a divine system and master plan for our world. When one part of the world structure appears out of sync with the way we understand it should be, we are quick to draw conclusions about the entire cosmos. However, the worlds of physics, chemistry, astronomy, or the other natural science demonstrates otherwise. There, even the smallest atom is seen to have its own structure and function. Every particle of matter is subject to specific laws and is part of a defined framework, a cosmic order which is vast and complex. Imagine that you are in a massive building that has thousands of rooms. The furniture in each room is perfectly arranged. However, in one tiny room with strange furnishing, the sense of organization, so obvious in the rest of the structure, is not immediately apparent. Since the gigantic building and its thousands of chambers can be seen as part of an orderly system, undoubtedly the individual room and its unique furnishings are also part of the overall plan. Although the untrained observer may not at first understand the unusual pattern, with some thought he will come to realize that it would also be a part of the larger system. I feel it would be superfluous to spell out the meaning of the parable. I just wish to add one detail. If each one of us, including you yourself, were to ponder all the events of our lives, wherever they occurred, and we would look objectively, and we would have to agree that there were tens and thousands of instances we were led in a certain direction. Nevertheless, the Holy One desires that a person should do things of his own free will. He therefore allows each person the ability to choose his own path. It is therefore no wonder that, being only human, there can be a few occasions when a person falls off the path, and instead of the path being a straight one, there are some zigzags. But if we give it thought and we don't fool ourselves, we see to it that the number of zigzags should be as few and infrequent as possible. Then we arrive at the goal which the Holy One has set up for every person, and particularly for each individual, that he and his family should be truly happy. We can come to this by conducting ourselves according to Torah, which is known as the Torah of life. We need only be wary of the criticism often used by the evil inclination. He points to a person who people believe to be frum or religious and observant, and who conducts himself according to Torah, and then goes about highlighting that individual's seeming deficiencies. The evil inclination thus wishes to demonstrate to the person with whom it is seeking to influence that since the frum religious person is a person who conducts himself according to Torah and nonetheless has those negative points, the proof being that he did this or that misdeed, then the Torah itself must perforce not be commendable, God forbid. This, however, is of course patently false. For the evil inclination is only presenting one aspect of the person and not the individual as a whole. This is illuminated by a story. If a person is walking in the street and meets someone leaving a medical specialist's office, and the person is using crutches, the passerby could think that the specialist is not good. After all, this person visited him and paid him a lot of money and is obeying all the doctor's instructions, and he still needs crutches. But if someone would explain to the passerby that before the patient was in the doctor's care, he couldn't move his feet altogether and was completely paralyzed, then he would realize that the doctor has reduced the paralysis, strengthened the patient, and enabled him to use his feet and even to walk. As time goes on, things improve for the patient. It's getting easier, even though he still needs crutches. There may come a time, if he follows the doctor's advice, that he will get rid of the crutches and be completely healed. The same is true for people. From the time they are born, they all have different qualities, some of them more good and some more bad. Through education by good teachers, and above all through self-improvement, provided it is done correctly, these bad traits over time become weaker and less effective. Since a person has to grow his entire life, it is no wonder that we can meet a person in the middle of his personal growth and development work, his self-training, and still find some of his negative qualities. This is not necessarily because he isn't following the instructions as a specialist in his training. Rather, by every measure, he has weakened and reduced his negative qualities compared to how he was earlier.